Hi, my name is George Coles, and I am an avid retro video game collector.
Do a barrel roll!
I have decided to document my journeys as I grow my collection. Please join me as I share with you my finds. Welcome to Retro Game Treasure Hunting.
Hi everybody and welcome to Retro Game Treasure Hunting. My name is George Coles and yet again I've let my collection stack up for a little bit without doing a video, so I'm just going to quickly run through about 15 or so games that I've picked up since my last video. Now I'm going to give basically the overall review of them as I go through. So let's start off. Back to the Future for NES. Now this game is, and I don't know what that is. I'm guessing that's from a video store at some point or a resale store. This game's been derided, and I've seen bad connotations on it. I don't think it's as horrible as most people think it is. I think it's okay. Probably give it a 3 out of 5, 5 being the best. But not a terrible game, and I like, you'll see, I'm picking up a lot of the licensed games now as I go through my Nintendo list. I've already got pretty much all of the Nintendo games that I want, and now I'm just trying to get some oddities and stuff that has kitsch value, kind of like this, Knight Rider for the Nintendo. This one don't have that sticker, but now this is a truly, I want to say it's a bad game, but it really is a bad game. Probably give it a 1 out of 5 if I were to rate it. Next up, Tiny Toons Adventures. And again, if you notice, I'm a kid that was growing up in the 80s. Back to the Future, Knight Rider, Tiny Toons, all were great parts of my youth. As you can see, I'm going to take a picture and put it up over here. This was once owned by a kid named Billy, and you can kind of see where he put in marker here his name, but that's okay. It's not that big, and it doesn't really show as well. It's a fantastic game. I'm going to give that one a 4 out of 5. Next up, Batman for the NES. Again, go back to the era that I was a child, and that Batman movie, that first one with Michael Keaton, what a big influence. As my friend Aaron will tell you, my best friend growing up, who's still my best friend to this day, he likes to make fun of me because the first day of 7th grade, the year that this came out, I showed up to school. I had Batman shoes, Batman pants. I want to say they were sweatpants. Batman t-shirt and a Batman baseball hat. So I was all in on Batman, and this game actually, if you're not familiar with this and you're an NES collector, this is a true gem. This game is a 5 out of 5. One of the great games of the system. I don't know why I hadn't picked it up yet. Maybe I just hadn't had a chance to, but you know, such is life. Next up, one of my personal favorites for the NES, and again, I just haven't seen this at a fair price. A lot of people want more than it's really booked for, and I can understand, and this is Tecmo Bowl. It gets lost now in the days of Madden dominating everything, but back when I was a kid, there were multiple football franchises that would come out. You had Tecmo Bowl, John Elway football, 10-yard fight. There was so much different things that came out, and Tecmo Bowl was a standout for the NES. Now, playing it now, and you could play it, it's actually, if you have the subscription to Switch Online, it's on there as a game to play, and you can see it's not the greatest compared now, but for its era, it was a fantastic football game, and definitely the top of its era. I give that a 4 out of 5. Next up, This one I think is really neat for the NES, and this will be the last of my NES pickups. That's WCW World Championship Wrestling. Now, if you follow the channel, you know I'm a huge wrestling fan. There's a card of it. This one, I walked into my game store, and my friend John, who runs the place, he knows me. And he says, I got something for you. And I said, okay. And first he brings me out this. He says, I know you want this. Because I had told him before, I do want, this is one of the wrestling games I don't have. I'm a huge Fantastic Wrestling fan. And I liked this game as a kid. Again, it was a really fun game back then. Then he brings out this beautiful piece of clamshell artwork that somebody obviously at some point made to hold the game. And I think that's just a beautiful display piece. I kind of want to track these down and put all of my Nintendo games in something like that, because that just looks amazing. I mean, look at that. It's so presentable. It's kind of like what you would see. Almost want to say this was something that was probably a rental store thing that they made for rental stores, but it's fantastic. I love it. And the game itself, it's a 3 out of 5. It's about what you would expect from an NES wrestling game. But God, I love that. And look at it. How can you not love the Road Warriors on the cover? Next up, we're going to move on to the Nintendo 64. And yeah, we're going to start off with something that I consider one of the worst video games of all time. Superman. A lot of people point to E.T., a lot of people say Friday the 13th. This, to me, is the worst game of all time. And I bought it for that reason. I wanted to have this into my collection. As much as I hate this game, and as much as I hated it when I purchased it originally, I like bad games. I like being able to point to my collection and go, that game is fucking terrible. And this game is, in my opinion, the worst game of all time. First off, every kid prior to this wanted a Superman game where you could play as Superman and just have the Superman powers. I mean, what kid does not want that? Even now, this game was so promising, but it failed on so many levels. And I think that's why I derided so much, because I had such high expectations with what was being done on the Nintendo 64 that piece of crap came out and it was nothing like what I expected. Now, going from that, that's the only Nintendo 64 pickup I have, to my only Super Nintendo pickup. That's Mega Man X. Now, you can also pick up Mega Man X. It's on the SNES Classic, which I also have. But to me, if you're going to have a Super Nintendo collection, this game is a must-have. I don't care if you have it on the Classic already. If you're, for budget reasons, that's your reasoning for not picking this up. I understand that. But to me, if you're going to collect for the system, I don't care who you are or what you're trying to collect, this is a must-have. One of the 5 or 10 best games on the system. Love this game very much. It's a very fun game. I give that game a 5 out of 5. Such an awesome and amazing game, in my opinion. Now, next up, one of my other big loves, Star Wars. And this is one of the great Star Wars games. I've talked about it before. They're very few and far between. In this era, the Star Wars Battlefront, the original version of Star Wars Battlefront series, was knocking it out the park. And this is a Renegade Squadron for the PSP. There's another one of these in the Battlefront series on the PSP that's also fantastic as well. This is just such a fun game and such a cool little multiplayer game. You could play with up to 16 people at the time, which was amazing. And I'm just reading that off the back. But yeah, thinking about that when this came out, how cool that would have been. This game was just a really fun game, and I really loved the cover. It's kind of, your generic guy with gun on the cover, but if you notice, it's just a regular trooper, and then you got Boba Fett and Han Solo with Slave One and the Millennium Falcon in the background. So, yeah, fun game in my opinion. I give this game a 4 out of 5. One of the real quality games for PSP. One of the reasons why I picked up a PSP. Now, these next two games, I don't necessarily consider them retro games, but they're part of a collection that I'm building, which if you watched a few shows I've talked about. And that is, and I'm going to bring them both up at the same time, Final Fantasy 13 and Final Fantasy 13-2. I had to pick them up. They were $5 a piece, and they're only going to go up in value. I mean, Final Fantasy is one of the most marketable and bankable properties there is. I've seen them, had to get them. Both of these games are solid, awesome games. I want to say, it's been a while since I played either, but I want to say I like 13-2 a little bit better. But both of them I thought were really fantastic. Both of them I would give solid 4s to, if not 5s. But both very fantastic games. I haven't delved back into them since I got these. A lot of these games I've already played again, which is why I could give more definitive ratings on them. But these two, as you can imagine, Final Fantasy games, a little bit more involved. So it's going to take a little bit more than just a quick playthrough to give you a rating on them. Now, next up, we're going to go into my GameCube purchases. Metroid Prime Echoes 2. And if you can see that, how it's coming off of that fantastic foil cover. As you can see, it's a complete game game and manual and everything in here. I like this game a lot, and I like the Prime series. The only drawback of playing this now as opposed to playing this then is that shooting games and third-person shooters have a specific control scheme that's pretty much universal at this point, and that's not what's used on here. So it's kind of weird after playing years of Call of Duty and all that kind of thing to go back to this, which isn't necessarily the same. Now, next up, another GameCube purchase. An interesting game because it's one of the few times Nintendo's licensed out a character to a different game. Another one complete. As you can see, the character is Link from the Zelda series, but a fantastic fighting game, Soul Calibur 2. I was a little bit worried when I purchased this, and I was going to buy it anyway just because of that, because of the Link factor. I was a little bit worried that it wouldn't hold up well. This is still a very good fighting game, and as known by people that play Smash, the Smash Brothers series, the GameCube controllers work really well on fighting games, and I think this is a fantastic example of that. This game's a solid 4. I think I forgot to mention Metroid over here was a solid 5. So another game I would highly recommend if you're someone that wants to start collecting for GameCube. It's a very cheap game to get. It's a very good game to have as well, and very much fun. Now, next up, Tony Hawk Pro Skater 4. Now, I love the Tony Hawk games. Who didn't as well? Another one complete in box. The reason I picked this one up, much like I said with that one, this is very cheap. I think I paid $4 or $5 for it. So, again, another great example if you're a GameCube collector. I've been saying this since my very first video, which were on a couple GameCube games, that the time is right now to pick up GameCube games. They are only going to explode within the next couple years, and a game like this that you can pick up now for $5 is going to be $20, $25 very soon. Trust me on this. Last but not least, our lone PlayStation 2 game, Wild Arms 3. I am a fan of the Wild Arms series, and this is another complete in box. This is not my favorite of the Wild Arms games. Wild Arms 2 I like better. I like 2, then 1, and then this one, 3 being my third favorite of the games. Not to say that this is a bad game. This is a very good game. It's a very fun game. It's very much something I enjoyed, and I like this game a lot, which is why I purchased it. It's a great series, and it's kind of one that's a little bit overlooked and has been overlooked with time. But I think it's a fun series to get back into. But I'm gonna say I give this one a 4 out of 5. So as a quick recap, Wild Arms 4 is a 4, Tony Hawk 4 a 4, Soul Calibur 2 a 4, Metroid Prime 2 Echoes a 5, Final Fantasy X or a 13 and 13-2. Both of them 4/5s, depending on when you see me. Renegade Squadron, definitely a 4 for the system. Superman, a 0 or a 1, whatever you want to go with. Mega Man X is a 5. World Championship Wrestling, a 3. Tecmo Bowl, a 4. Batman, a 5. Tiny Toons, a 4. Tiny Toons Adventure. Knight Rider, a 1. And Back to Future, a 3. So as you can see, my pickups went all over the place, from good to great to historically bad. Got one of the best games that's ever been made, one of the worst games that's ever been made, and everything in between. So, as you can see, it's such as the life of a collector. I enjoy it. I'm having a lot of fun, and I'm having a lot of fun doing these videos. I know a lot of you guys that are watching these seem to enjoy them, so I appreciate that. I appreciate any feedback. If you think, let me know what you think about some of these games. What your favorite out of this pickup was, what your least favorite was, what you think the worst game of all time might be. But either way, with all that being said, my name is George Coles, and this has been another episode of Retro Game Treasure Hunting.